Maya Richardson pulled into the parking lot of the Regional Trust Bank branch on the corner of Maple and Oak Streets. She adjusted her casual denim jacket and checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. Today wasn't about making impressions. As the CEO, it was about seeing how her newly acquired bank truly operated when no one knew the boss was watching. The morning sun felt warm on her face as she stepped out of her modest sedan. She'd deliberately left her luxury car at home. Maya had built her tech company from nothing into an empire over 15 years, and last month she had finally achieved one of her biggest dreams, acquiring Regional Trust, a mid-sized banking chain with branches across 3 states. Time to see how things really work around here, she murmured to herself, tucking her designer purse under her arm. Inside was her ID, bank cards, and the documentation she needed for a substantial cash withdrawal from her personal account. The branch looked welcoming enough from the outside, clean windows, fresh paint, and a tidy entrance. Maya pushed through the glass doors and took in the scene. 4 tellers worked the counter, and there was a short line of customers waiting. Soft music played overhead, and the air smelled faintly of coffee from a small refreshment station in the corner. Maya joined the line and observed. One elderly customer seemed confused about a form, and the teller was patiently explaining it. Another customer was making a deposit and chatting about the weather, normal banking operations. She nodded to herself, pleased so far. When her turn came, Maya approached the young man at the 3rd window. His nameplate read, Kevin. He looked about 25 with neatly combed hair and a crisp white shirt under his navy vest with the Regional Trust logo. "Good morning," he said with a practiced smile. "How can I help you today?" Maya returned his smile. "Good morning. I'd like to make a withdrawal, please." She slid her ID and withdrawal slip across the counter. Kevin's eyes widened slightly as he glanced at the amount, $8,500. He looked at Maya, then back at the slip. That's quite a large cash withdrawal," he said, his voice shifting to a more cautious tone. Maya nodded. "Yes, I understand. I have the funds in my account." Kevin picked up her ID and studied it, then looked at Maya's face a bit longer than seemed necessary. "I'll need to get approval for this. Bank policy for large cash transactions. I'll be right back." As Kevin walked away with her ID, Maya watched him approach an older man in a charcoal suit who was helping another employee with something at a desk. Kevin showed him the withdrawal slip and her ID, and they both looked over at her. The man in the suit approached. "I'm Thomas Wilson, assistant manager. Kevin tells me you're trying to withdraw a large sum in cash?" Maya maintained her friendly demeanor. "Yes, that's correct. Is there a problem?" Thomas gave her a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Well, we have certain procedures for cash transactions over $5,000. Security purposes, you understand." "Of course," Maya replied. "I'm happy to comply with whatever procedures you need." "May I ask what this cash is for?" Thomas asked, still holding her ID. Maya raised an eyebrow. "Personal reasons. Does the purpose affect whether I can access my own money?" Thomas cleared his throat. "No, not technically, but we do try to advise our customers about the risks of carrying large amounts of cash. Perhaps a cashier's check would be better." "I appreciate the concern," Maya said firmly, "but I prefer cash for this particular need." Thomas nodded, but didn't move toward processing her request. "Have you been a customer with us long?" "I don't recognize you." "I've had an account for about a month," Maya answered truthfully. She had opened personal accounts at several branches when the acquisition was finalized. "I see." Thomas glanced at her ID again. "And you're sure you wouldn't prefer to use your usual branch?" Customers typically develop a relationship with their home branch, and unusual transactions are easier there. Maya felt a familiar tightening in her chest, the feeling she'd experienced countless times throughout her career when someone was creating unnecessary obstacles. "This is convenient for me today," she explained patiently. "My account allows me to bank at any branch, correct?" "Yes, but—" Thomas hesitated. "Look, Ms. Richardson, cash withdrawals of this size require special handling. Our branch manager, Mr. Chen, isn't in today. Perhaps you could come back tomorrow when he's here." Maya took a deep breath. The line behind her was growing, and she could feel people starting to stare. A woman with a baby on her hip was checking her watch impatiently. "I understand bank security," Maya said evenly. "I'm happy to provide additional identification if needed. I have my passport in my purse as well." Thomas seemed surprised by this offer, but still reluctant. "Well, that would help, but there's still the issue of cash reserves. We might not have that much cash readily available in the teller drawers." Maya glanced around the branch. There were 2 ATMs inside, a night deposit box, and undoubtedly a vault in the back. A bank this size not having $8,500 available seemed highly unlikely. "Perhaps we could check if the cash is available?" she suggested. "Let me see what we can do," Thomas said, turning to Kevin. "Check the system again and verify the funds are actually there." Maya felt her patience wearing thin. She knew perfectly well the money was there. She had transferred it herself just yesterday to ensure this visit would go smoothly. Kevin tapped at his computer and nodded to Thomas. "The funds are available in the account," he confirmed. "Well, that's good," Thomas said, not sounding entirely pleased. "But I'm still concerned about such a large cash transaction for a relatively new customer. There are fraud concerns we need to consider." The woman with the baby behind Maya sighed loudly. Maya turned and gave her an apologetic smile, then faced Thomas again. "I understand your concerns," she said, keeping her voice level. "But I've provided proper identification. The funds are in my account, and I'm simply requesting access to my own money." "Is there something specific about me that's raising these fraud concerns?" Thomas straightened his tie. "It's not about you specifically, Ms. Richardson. It's about our procedures." But his eyes didn't quite meet hers, and Maya had been in enough boardrooms to recognize discomfort when she saw it. This wasn't just about procedures. This was the exact reason she'd decided to conduct this test in the first place. "How long have these procedures been in place?" she asked. Thomas seemed thrown by the question. Well, they're standard banking practices. For everyone," Maya pressed. "Or just for certain customers?" The assistant manager's face flushed slightly. "For any large transaction, of course." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "I see. And if I were to come back tomorrow when Mr. Chen is here, would the procedure be different?" "He has more authority to approve exceptions," Thomas admitted. "So this is an exception to normal service, not a procedure," Maya clarified. By now, 45 minutes had passed since she first approached the counter. The line had grown to 8 people, most looking annoyed. Kevin kept glancing nervously between Maya and Thomas, clearly uncomfortable with the situation but following his superior's lead. Maya had seen enough. This wasn't just poor customer service. It was the kind of subtle discrimination she'd faced throughout her career, the kind she'd hoped to eliminate from her bank. She straightened her shoulders and looked Thomas directly in the eyes. "Mr. Wilson, I think there's something you should know about me." "Yes?" he replied, still holding her ID. "My name is Maya Richardson," she said clearly, "and I own this bank." Thomas Wilson's face went completely blank, as if someone had pressed pause on a video. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Beside him, Kevin the teller gripped the counter, his knuckles turning white. The busy sounds of the bank seemed to fade away as everyone within earshot turned to stare. I don't understand," Thomas finally stammered, blinking rapidly. "I think you do," Maya said calmly. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the counter. "Maya Richardson, CEO of Horizon Tech Solutions and, as of last month, the new owner of Regional Trust Bank, including this branch." Kevin picked up the card with trembling fingers. "Oh my God," he whispered. You're the woman from the company memo, the new owner." Thomas was still frozen, her ID card dangling limply from his fingers. His face had turned an alarming shade of red, spreading up from his collar to his hairline. "The memo with my photo," Maya confirmed with a nod, "which apparently you didn't pay much attention to." An older woman in line behind Maya let out a small gasp and whispered something to the person beside her. The news was spreading through the branch like wildfire. Thomas finally found his voice, though it cracked embarrassingly. "Ms. Richardson, I had no idea. I didn't recognize." "Clearly," Maya cut him off, her voice firm but not unkind. "Now, about my withdrawal." Thomas practically jumped to attention. Yes, of course, right away. He turned to Kevin. Process Ms. Richardson's withdrawal immediately. Kevin was already furiously typing at his terminal. Yes, sir, right away, sir. Maya held up a hand. Actually, I'd prefer if we all took a deep breath first. The frantic energy halted. Thomas swallowed hard, looking like he might be sick. You think you're about to be fired, don't you? Maya asked quietly. Thomas nodded miserably. I completely understand if that's your decision, Ms. Richardson. The woman with the baby had stopped looking annoyed and was now watching the scene with undisguised interest, as was everyone else in the branch. Maya noticed several employees peering out from behind desks and through doorways. I didn't come here today to fire anyone, Maya said. I came to learn, and I have learned quite a bit in the last 45 minutes. She glanced around at the gathered audience, then back to Thomas. Could you ask someone to handle the other customers while we continue this conversation? Perhaps in Mr. Chen's office. Thomas nodded quickly and waved over another employee. Lisa, can you please take over this window and get some help with the line? The crowd reluctantly dispersed as other tellers opened their windows. Maya followed Thomas through a door marked private and into a comfortably appointed office. Kevin trailed behind them, still clutching her withdrawal slip like it might explode. Once the door closed, Maya took a seat in one of the chairs facing the desk. Thomas and Kevin remained standing, looking like schoolchildren sent to the principal. Please sit down, Maya said, gesturing to the other chairs. This will be easier if we're all comfortable. They sat stiffly on the edges of their seats. Am I correct in assuming this is Mr. Chen's office? Maya asked, looking around at the family photos on the desk and the degree from Stanford on the wall. Yes, ma'am, Thomas replied. He's at the regional meeting today. The regional meeting I'm supposed to be attending after lunch, Maya nodded. I decided to visit a few branches first, unannounced. Kevin looked like he might faint. Are you doing this at all the branches? Similar evaluations, yes, Maya confirmed. I believe in knowing exactly what I've purchased, including how my banks treat their customers. Thomas clasped his hands together to stop them from shaking. Ms. Richardson, I want to sincerely apologize for any inconvenience or disrespect. If I had recognized you, that's exactly the problem, isn't it? Maya interrupted gently. You would have treated me differently if you had known who I was. But why should anyone need to be a CEO to get good service at this bank? Thomas fell silent, his eyes dropping to his hands. Maya continued, her voice thoughtful rather than angry. I'd like to understand what happened out there. Walk me through your thought process when you saw my withdrawal request. Kevin and Thomas exchanged uncomfortable glances. It was a large amount. Kevin offered weakly. The bank processes large withdrawals every day, Maya countered. Try again. Thomas cleared his throat. You were unfamiliar to us, a relatively new customer. The bank gets new customers every day, Maya said. Keep going. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Was it because I'm a woman? Maya asked directly. No, Thomas said quickly. Too quickly. Was it because I'm black? The question hung in the air. Neither man would meet her eyes. We wouldn't. Thomas struggled for words. You might not do it consciously, Maya said. Most bias isn't deliberate these days. But when a well-dressed black woman comes into your bank with proper ID, with money in her account, and asks for a withdrawal that's well within normal banking operations, and you spend nearly an hour creating roadblocks, it's hard not to wonder why. Kevin looked genuinely distressed. I just followed procedure. The procedure that you apparently don't follow for everyone, Maya pointed out. I watched 3 other customers complete transactions while I was waiting. One man deposited a check for $12,000 and you processed it without question. That was different, Thomas protested. He was making a deposit, not a withdrawal. And the woman who withdrew $3,000 in cash? That was under the $5,000 threshold. And the older gentleman who withdrew $6,500 for his new boat engine? Thomas fell silent again. He's been a customer for years, Kevin said quietly. So relationships matter more than policies? Maya asked. That's actually a fair banking principle. But it means new customers are at a disadvantage from day one. And when those new customers are people who look like me, and you add in unconscious biases. She let the thought hang in the air. I didn't come here to shame you, Maya continued after a moment. I came because I believe in this bank's potential. I believe in community banking. I believe most people try to do the right thing, but sometimes we need to see our blind spots. Thomas nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression replacing his panic. I've never had someone point this out before. Most people wouldn't, Maya acknowledged. They'd just take their business elsewhere. They'd tell their friends and family about their experience. They'd post about it online, and you'd never know why you were losing customers. Kevin rubbed the back of his neck. What happens now? Now? Maya smiled slightly. Now I'd still like my withdrawal, please. Right away, Thomas said, standing quickly. And after that, Maya continued, I'd like to invite both of you to join me for lunch. They stared at her in surprise. Really? Kevin asked. Yes, I'd like to discuss some ideas I have for the future of regional trust, including new training programs and community outreach initiatives. Maya stood as well. I'm looking for people who can acknowledge mistakes and grow from them. People who want to be part of positive change. Thomas's expression shifted from fear to something like cautious hope. You're not firing us? What good would that do? Maya asked. Fire you. Hire someone else with different blind spots and nothing changes. I'd rather fix the system than just shuffle the people around. Kevin smiled for the first time since she'd revealed her identity. I'd like to be part of that. Good, Maya said, heading toward the door. Because I believe banking should work for everyone. And that means taking a hard look at who it's not working for now, and why. As they walked back into the main area of the branch, the atmosphere had completely changed. Word had spread, and every employee was watching them with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Maya paused before reaching the teller windows and turned to Thomas. One more thing before we process my withdrawal and head to lunch. Yes, Ms. Richardson? He asked attentively. She smiled. Please call me Maya. And I think now might be a good time for you to introduce me to the rest of the staff. After all, we're going to be working together to build something better. Of course, Thomas agreed, visibly relieved at Maya's gracious approach. He led her back into the main area of the branch where curious eyes followed their every move. Thomas cleared his throat loudly. Everyone, could I have your attention, please? The quiet murmurs died down as all employees turned toward them. Some were peering around corners or standing on tiptoes to get a better view. I'd like to introduce someone very important, Thomas continued, his voice growing steadier. This is Maya Richardson, the new owner and CEO of Regional Trust Bank. A ripple of whispers spread through the branch. A young woman at the loan desk dropped a stack of papers. An older teller's mouth fell open in shock. Maya stepped forward with a warm smile. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry for the surprise visit, but I wanted to see how things really operate when no one knows the boss is watching. The employees exchanged nervous glances. A tall man with glasses spoke up hesitantly. Are we in trouble? Maya shook her head. Not at all, though I've had quite an educational experience this morning. She glanced at Thomas, who looked down at his shoes. I believe in being straightforward, Maya continued. So here's what happened. I came in as a regular customer and requested a withdrawal from my account. I was met with, let's call them obstacles that I don't believe every customer would face. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. Several employees shifted uneasily. I'm not here to point fingers or make accusations, Maya assured them. I'm here because I care about making this bank the best it can be. For all customers, regardless of what they look like or how long they've been banking with us. Kevin, who had remained silent beside Thomas, suddenly spoke up. Ms. Richardson, Maya, showed us something important today. Something we might not have seen otherwise, Thomas nodded. She's right. We treated her differently and we didn't even realize we were doing it. Maya smiled at their candor. That's exactly why I'm here. To help us all see the things we might miss. Now, I'd love to meet each of you properly. For the next 15 minutes, Maya walked around the branch, shaking hands and learning names. She asked questions about their roles, how long they'd been with the bank, and what they thought could be improved. The initial tension gradually melted away as employees realized she was genuinely interested in their perspectives. Lisa, the teller who had taken over Kevin's window, confided, sometimes our policies make it hard to give customers what they need. We're so focused on following rules that we forget why we're here in the first place. Maya nodded thoughtfully. That's a valuable insight. Rules matter, but so does judgment and treating people with respect. By the time she finished her impromptu meet and greet, Maya could feel a shift in the atmosphere. The fear had been replaced by curiosity and even excitement. She returned to the center of the lobby and addressed everyone again. I appreciate your openness today. Now I'd like to do something a bit unorthodox. I'm inviting you all to an impromptu staff meeting. Right now. Thomas looked startled. All of us? But what about the customers? Maya checked her watch. It's nearly noon. Can we close for lunch for 1 hour? Put up a sign saying we'll reopen at 1 o'clock? Thomas hesitated only briefly before nodding. Yes, we can do that. Within 10 minutes, the remaining customers had been served. The doors were locked with a closed for staff meeting sign displayed, and all 15 employees gathered in the branch's conference room. It was a tight fit, but everyone found a place around the large table or leaning against the walls. Maya stood at the head of the table, taking a moment to look at each face. Thank you all for adjusting your schedules. What happened this morning has made me realize we need to have an honest conversation. Right now, not weeks from now after it gets filtered through corporate communications. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I built my tech company from nothing over 15 years. As a black woman in tech, I faced more barriers than I can count. People who underestimated me, questioned my qualifications, or simply ignored me in rooms where I was often the only person who looked like me. Several employees nodded in understanding. A young black woman in the corner gave a small, knowing smile. When I decided to acquire Regional Trust, Maya continued, it wasn't just a business decision. Banking is personal. It's about trust. It's right there in our name. It's about helping people build futures, buy homes, start businesses, and create security for their families. She leaned forward, placing her hands on the table. But banking hasn't worked equally for everyone. Historically, certain communities have faced barriers to financial services that others haven't. Sometimes those barriers are obvious, but often they're subtle, so woven into our systems and habits that we don't even notice them. The room was completely silent now, everyone hanging on her words. What I experienced today wasn't blatant discrimination, Maya acknowledged. It was something quieter, something in the extra questions, the heightened suspicion, the assumption that there must be something wrong because I didn't fit someone's mental image of a person who handles large sums of cash. Thomas spoke up from his seat. I never thought of myself as biased, but today made me question a lot of my assumptions. Maya nodded appreciatively. That's exactly the kind of self-reflection we need. And it's not just about race. It could be assumptions about young people, elderly customers, people with disabilities, or anyone who doesn't match our unconscious picture of an ideal customer. A middle-aged woman raised her hand tentatively. I've worked in banking for 22 years. Sometimes I catch myself being more suspicious of younger customers. I never really examined why. Thank you for that honesty, Maya said. That's how change begins, with awareness. Kevin, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. So what happens now? How do we fix this? Maya smiled. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't have all the answers. But I know where we start. She pulled out her phone and began typing. I'm emailing my assistant right now to cancel my remaining meetings today. Instead, we're going to work together, right here, right now, to begin creating a new vision for Regional Trust. She looked around the room. I want to hear your ideas. What would make this bank better? How can we serve all our customers with dignity and respect? What training do you need? What policies need to change? For a moment, no one spoke. Then hands started going up around the room. A young loan officer suggested, what if we had community advisory boards? People from different backgrounds who could give us feedback on how we're doing. An older teller added, we could review all our policies through an equity lens. Ask ourselves who they might unintentionally exclude. Ideas began flowing faster. Maya grabbed a marker and started writing on the whiteboard at the front of the room, filling it with suggestions. Customer service training that includes bias, awareness, outreach programs for underbanked communities, more diverse marketing, materials, flexible ID requirements for elderly or homeless customers, financial literacy programs in multiple languages. As the board filled with ideas, Maya felt a surge of optimism. This was exactly what she had hoped for when she purchased the bank, the chance to create real change from within. After nearly 40 minutes of brainstorming, Maya capped the marker and turned to face the group. This is incredible work, everyone. But ideas are just the beginning. Starting tomorrow, we're going to put these into action. I'm establishing a diversity and service excellence task force, and I want representatives from every level of the organization. She pointed to Thomas. I'd like you to co-chair this task force. Thomas looked stunned. Me? But after this morning? Especially after this morning, Maya confirmed. You've had a powerful learning experience, and that perspective is valuable. Sometimes the people who have just had their eyes opened become the strongest advocates for change. She turned to the young black woman who had smiled knowingly earlier. Would you be willing to co-chair with Thomas? I think having diverse leadership would strengthen this initiative. The woman straightened in her chair. I'd be honored. My name is Nia. I've been a personal banker here for 3 years. Perfect, Maya said. Nia and Thomas, I'll need your first report in 2 weeks. And this isn't just for show. I'm allocating real resources to implement the best ideas. Maya glanced at her watch. We need to reopen in 10 minutes, but before we do, I want to make one thing clear. What happened today wasn't a gotcha moment. It was a gift, an opportunity to see ourselves more clearly and to grow. She looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. Banking is built on trust, and trust requires honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. I'm trusting you all to be part of this change, and I hope you'll trust me to lead it with integrity. As the meeting broke up and employees prepared to reopen the branch, Maya noticed something different in their demeanor. The fear was gone, replaced by a sense of purpose. Even Thomas seemed transformed, already deep in conversation with Nia about their task force plans. Kevin approached Maya as she gathered her notes. I just wanted to say thank you, he said quietly, for not firing us, for seeing potential instead of just problems. Maya smiled. That's what good leadership is about, Kevin. Seeing people for who they can become, not just who they are today. She tucked her notes into her purse. Now I believe I still need to make that withdrawal. And then perhaps you can recommend somewhere good for lunch? I have a feeling this is going to be a very productive afternoon. The next morning, Maya arrived at Regional Trust's headquarters in a glass and steel building downtown. Unlike her casual appearance at the branch yesterday, today she wore a tailored navy suit that projected the authority of her position. Her assistant, Tanya, met her at the elevator with a tablet in hand and a concerned expression. You've caused quite a stir, Tanya said, falling into step beside Maya as they walked toward the executive suite. Word about yesterday's branch visit has spread through the entire company. My phone hasn't stopped ringing. Maya smiled. Good. That was the point. The board members have been calling too, Tanya added, swiping through notifications on her tablet. Mr. Harrison has called 3 times already this morning. I'm sure he has, Maya replied, unsurprised. Robert Harrison was the longest-serving board member and had been visibly uncomfortable when Maya's acquisition was finalized. Is he waiting in my office? Along with the chief of operations and the head of HR, Tanya confirmed. Maya nodded, slowing her pace slightly. Give me the quick version. How bad is the panic level? Tanya glanced around to ensure no one was within earshot. On a scale of 1 to 10, about a 15. They're worried about lawsuits, bad publicity, and what they're calling disruption to established banking protocols. Disruption was exactly what this bank needed, Maya said firmly. And they knew that when they accepted my offer. They stopped outside the frosted glass door of the CEO's office. Maya could see the silhouettes of 3 people inside, their postures tense as they waited. Ready for battle? Tanya asked with a knowing smile. Maya straightened her shoulders. This isn't a battle, Tanya. It's a necessary conversation that's been avoided for far too long. She pushed open the door and entered with confident steps. 3 heads turned simultaneously, their expressions ranging from concern to barely concealed anger. Robert Harrison stood immediately, his tall frame and silver hair giving him a patrician appearance that matched his banking background. Maya, we need to discuss your unorthodox approach yesterday. Maya set her briefcase down and took her seat behind the desk, not rushing to respond. She gestured to the seats. Good morning, Robert. Diane, Vincent. Please sit down. Diane Lopez, the head of HR, clutched a folder of papers. Ms. Richardson, we've received numerous calls from branch employees about your impromptu meeting. There are protocols for implementing new initiatives, and there are problems that require immediate attention, Maya countered calmly. But before we discuss yesterday, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what I experienced as a customer. Vincent Patel, chief of operations, shifted uncomfortably. We've reviewed the security footage. While the service wasn't ideal, our staff was following established risk protocols for large cash transactions. Were they? Maya asked, raising an eyebrow. Because 3 other customers completed similar transactions while I waited for 45 minutes. The only difference was what those customers looked like. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. We can't know that for certain, Robert finally said, his tone measured. There could have been other factors. Like what? Maya challenged. My account was in good standing. I had proper identification. The money was available. What other factors would justify that treatment? Diane looked down at her notes. According to the branch report, you were a new customer making an unusual transaction. Define unusual, Maya said. Is it unusual for someone to withdraw their own money from their own account? The amount, Vincent began, was well within normal banking operations, Maya finished for him. Let's be honest with ourselves. If I had been a middle-aged white man in a business suit, would the same concerns have been raised? None of them answered directly. Robert cleared his throat. Maya, we all support diversity and inclusion. The bank has had policies in place for years. Policies on paper aren't enough, Maya replied. Yesterday showed me the gap between what we say and what actually happens in our branches. And that gap is what I intend to close. She opened her briefcase and pulled out several folders, handing one to each of them. This is the outline of the Diversity and Service Excellence Initiative that the branch team and I developed yesterday. I want it implemented across all branches within 30 days. They flipped through the documents with surprised expressions. This is quite comprehensive, Diane acknowledged, looking genuinely impressed despite her initial resistance. Mystery shopper programs, community advisory boards, bias training, policy reviews. 30 days isn't realistic, Vincent protested. The logistics alone would take 6 months in normal banking timelines, I know, Maya interrupted. But this isn't a normal situation. Every day we delay is another day we potentially lose customers, damage trust, and fail to live up to our own values. Robert frowned. The cost of this program will be significant. And the cost of doing nothing is even higher, Maya countered. She turned to her computer and pulled up a presentation on the large screen on the wall. Let me show you something. Charts and graphs appeared, showing customer retention rates broken down by demographics. These are our current numbers. Notice anything interesting? Diane squinted at the data. Our retention rates for Black and Hispanic customers are significantly lower than for other groups. Exactly, Maya said. We're losing these customers at 3 times the rate of white customers. When I had my team analyze exit surveys, a pattern emerged. Perceptions of unequal treatment, excessive scrutiny, and general discomfort with the banking experience. She clicked to the next slide. Now here's the financial impact. Each lost customer costs us an average of $4,200 in lifetime value. Multiply that by our attrition numbers. Vincent winced at the figure displayed. That's substantial. More than the cost of my proposed initiative, Maya confirmed. This isn't just about doing the right thing, though that should be reason enough. It's also smart business. She clicked through several more slides showing research on diverse banking practices and their impact on growth and customer loyalty. By the time she finished, the atmosphere in the room had shifted noticeably. You've clearly done your homework, Robert admitted reluctantly. I always do, Maya replied. I didn't build a successful tech company and acquire this bank without understanding the numbers. But yesterday reminded me that numbers don't tell the whole story. The human experience matters just as much. Diane nodded slowly. I have to admit, your approach with the branch staff was surprising. Most executives would have fired the employees involved. Firing them wouldn't solve the systemic problem, Maya explained. And it would send the wrong message to everyone else, that we punish mistakes instead of learning from them. She stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. The banking industry has a long history of unequal access and treatment. We can't change that history, but we can change how we move forward. Turning back to face them, she continued with passion in her voice. I want Regional Trust to be a leader in this space. I want us to be the bank that every person in every community feels welcomed and respected in. Not just because it's right, but because it makes us stronger. Vincent was nodding now, his initial resistance fading. The branch staff are apparently quite energized by the initiative. My team said the phones were ringing all afternoon with ideas and questions. That's what happens when people feel empowered to make real change, Maya said with a smile. They've been on the front lines seeing these issues every day. They just needed permission to address them. Robert still looked concerned. The board will have questions about implementation and oversight, which is why I'd like you to personally oversee the board's involvement. Robert, Maya said, watching his expression shift from concern to surprise. Your experience and standing will lend credibility to the initiative, and I think you'll find it more rewarding than you expect. It was a strategic move, giving the most skeptical board member a stake in the program's success. Robert straightened in his chair, looking thoughtful. I'll need to see more detailed plans, of course, and he said. But I could be interested in that role. Maya smiled. Excellent. I've scheduled a working lunch with Thomas and Nia, the co-chairs from the branch, to go over the details. I'd like all of you to join us. She returned to her desk and sat down, signaling that the initial confrontation was shifting to collaboration. Now let's talk about how we make this initiative successful. I need each of your departments fully committed. For the next hour, the conversation flowed more productively. Diane offered insights on training approaches that had worked well in other contexts. Vincent identified branches that could serve as initial test sites based on their customer demographics. Even Robert contributed ideas for measuring success and reporting to the board. As they were wrapping up, Maya's phone buzzed with a message. She glanced down and smiled. That's Thomas from the branch, she told the others. They've already started implementing changes on their own initiative. They've rearranged the lobby to be more welcoming, simplified their transaction approval process, and the staff have organized a community listening session for next week. Without corporate approval? Vincent asked, old habits resurfacing. With my approval, Maya corrected gently. Which is all they needed. Sometimes transformation happens from the bottom up, not the top down. Our job is to support it, not control it. As the three executives gathered their materials to leave, Diane paused at the door. You know, when the acquisition was announced, many of us weren't sure what to expect. Banking and tech have very different cultures. They do, Maya agreed. But people are people, no matter what industry they're in. We all want to be seen, heard, and valued. And to make a difference, Robert added unexpectedly. I'll admit I was skeptical about your approach, but there's something compelling about tackling a problem that's been ignored for too long. Maya smiled, sensing a genuine shift. That's because deep down, most people want to do the right thing. Sometimes they just need permission and a path forward. As they filed out, Tanya entered with Maya's schedule for the rest of the day. How did it go? She asked quietly. Maya leaned back in her chair with satisfaction. Better than expected. Sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the best outcomes. She looked down at the message from Thomas again, reading his excitement about the changes already taking place. What had started as a frustrating experience at a bank branch was transforming into something powerful. A ripple effect that would touch thousands of customers and employees. What's next on the agenda? Maya asked, energized rather than drained by the morning's confrontation. You have a media interview at 11, Tanya replied. They want to talk about your vision for the future of banking. Maya nodded thoughtfully. Perfect timing, because after yesterday, that vision is clearer than ever. 6 months had passed since Maya Richardson's eye-opening visit to the bank branch. The autumn morning was crisp and clear as she pulled into the same parking spot she'd used that fateful day. This time, however, there was no need for secrecy. The branch staff knew she was coming. This was an official celebration. Maya checked her reflection in the rearview mirror and smiled. The journey over the past half year had been challenging but deeply rewarding. As she stepped out of her car, she noticed the changes immediately. The once plain exterior now featured vibrant banners showcasing diverse customers and the bank's new slogan, Banking for Everyone. No exceptions. Near the entrance stood Thomas and Nia, the co-chairs of what had become known throughout the company as the Richardson Initiative. They were chatting with a small group of people, some in business attire, others dressed more casually. Maya recognized several community leaders among them. Maya, Nia called out warmly, waving her over. The formality of Ms. Richardson had long since been abandoned among the core team. Everyone's inside waiting. We wanted to give you the full effect when you enter. Thomas, whose transformation over the past months had been remarkable, extended his hand. It's a big day. Are you ready? Absolutely, Maya replied, genuine excitement in her voice. Though I must admit I'm a bit nervous. The last time I walked through those doors, I had no idea how much would change. For the better, Nia added with a confident nod. They led Maya toward the entrance, where a red ribbon stretched across the doorway. A small crowd had gathered outside, employees, customers, and local press. Maya hadn't expected quite this much attention, but she understood the significance of the moment. As they approached, the crowd broke into applause. Maya felt a surge of emotion but kept her composure. This wasn't about her, it was about the work they'd all done together. The bank's regional director stepped forward with a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this important day. 6 months ago, our CEO Maya Richardson walked into this branch as an ordinary customer and experienced something that many people in our communities face daily: banking inequality. Instead of simply addressing that single incident, she challenged us all to transform our entire approach to banking. Today, we celebrate the results of that vision. More applause followed. The director handed Maya a large pair of ceremonial scissors. Maya, would you do the honors of cutting this ribbon and officially launching our fully transformed branch, the first of many in our network? Maya stepped forward but then paused. She lowered the scissors and turned to the crowd. This moment doesn't belong to me alone, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the gathering. Thomas, Nia, please join me. And I'd also like Kevin to come forward. The young teller who had first handled her withdrawal request 6 months ago looked startled, but made his way through the crowd. His face had grown more confident over the months, having become an unexpected champion for change within the branch. The four of them held the scissors together and, with a clean snip, cut the ribbon. Cheers erupted as the doors swung open, revealing the transformed interior of the branch. Maya gasped softly. She had seen the plans, approved the budgets, and received regular updates, but seeing the final result in person was something else entirely. The sterile, intimidating banking hall had been reimagined as a welcoming community space. The imposing teller counter had been replaced with sleek, accessible stations where employees and customers could interact more naturally. A children's area with books and educational banking games occupied one corner. Digital screens displayed information in multiple languages. Most striking was the massive mural spanning the main wall, a vibrant depiction of the local community in all its diversity. With the bank building at its center, doors wide open to all. This is incredible, Maya murmured, taking it all in. Wait until you see how it functions, Thomas said with pride. It's not just about looks. As they moved further inside, Maya noticed other thoughtful changes. Clear signage explained banking processes in simple terms. A private consultation area was equipped with assistive technology for customers with disabilities. A digital learning station offered financial education resources. Community members and media representatives filtered in behind them, exclaiming over the transformation. A local news crew was capturing footage for the evening broadcast. Nia guided Maya to a small podium set up near the center of the branch. We'd like you to say a few words before the demonstration tours begin. Maya hadn't prepared anything formal, but as she looked around at what they'd accomplished, the words came easily. She adjusted the microphone and addressed the gathered crowd. 6 months ago, I stood in this very spot and experienced something that too many people face when they try to access financial services. I was treated differently, not because of my account status or banking history, but because of assumptions made about me based on my appearance. She paused, looking directly at Thomas and Kevin, who nodded in acknowledgement without shame. Their willingness to learn and change had been fundamental to the program's success. What happened next surprised everyone, including me. Instead of simply correcting that one interaction, we decided to examine the entire system that made it possible, and what we found were blind spots and barriers that had gone unquestioned for generations. Maya gestured to the transformed space around them. This branch represents our answer to those discoveries. But the physical changes you see are just the beginning. The real transformation has happened in our policies, our training, and most importantly, in our mindset. She motioned to Nia, who stepped forward with a tablet and brought up a presentation on the large display screen behind them. Over the past 6 months, Maya continued, we've made measurable progress. Customer satisfaction scores are up across all demographic groups, with the largest gains among those previously most dissatisfied. The screen showed colorful graphs illustrating the changes. New account openings from historically underbanked communities have increased by 42%. Loan approval rates now show no statistically significant differences across racial and gender lines when controlling for actual financial factors, eliminating gaps that had persisted for years. She clicked to the next slide. Perhaps most telling, customer retention has improved dramatically, saving the bank millions in lost business and proving that doing the right thing is also financially sound. A ripple of approving murmurs moved through the crowd, but numbers don't tell the whole story, Maya added softly. The real success is in the experiences that don't make headlines. The grandmother who feels respected when discussing her retirement options, the young entrepreneur who receives fair consideration for a business loan, the new immigrant who finds banking services in their native language. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of employees and community members. What we've created here isn't just about making banking more accessible. It's about recognizing the fundamental dignity of every person who walks through our doors. Thomas stepped forward, and it doesn't stop with this branch. The model we've developed is being rolled out across all regional trust locations, with adjustments to meet each community's specific needs. We've also created a banking equality toolkit that we're sharing with other financial institutions, Nia added. This isn't about competitive advantage, it's about industry-wide change. A woman in the audience raised her hand. I'm from the Center for Financial Inclusion. How are you measuring success beyond the numbers? Excellent question, Maya replied. We've established community advisory boards for each branch, which provide regular feedback on our progress. We also conduct experience audits, where diverse customers report on their banking interactions. Kevin, who had been quietly standing nearby, spoke up unexpectedly. And we listen to our employees. The people who work here every day see what's working and what still needs improvement. Maya smiled approvingly at his contribution. Exactly. This isn't a top-down initiative. It's a continuous collaboration. After answering a few more questions, Maya handed the microphone back to the regional director and stepped away from the podium. As the formal program transitioned to guided tours of the new facility, she found a quiet moment to observe the scene. Customers were exploring the space with genuine interest. Branch employees were proudly explaining the new features. Community leaders were engaged in animated conversations with bank executives. Robert Harrison, the once skeptical board member, approached her with an extended hand. I have to admit, I didn't see this vision at first. But what you've accomplished here, he gestured around the room. It's remarkable, and the preliminary financial results are even more compelling. Thank you, Robert, Maya replied. Your support made a real difference, especially with the other board members. The Harvard Business Review called yesterday, he mentioned casually. They want to do a case study on the initiative, and 3 other banks have reached out about implementing similar programs. Maya nodded thoughtfully. That's the real measure of success, when the change extends beyond our walls. As Robert moved away to speak with a local official, Thomas approached with an elderly woman using a walker. Maya, this is Mrs. Chen. She's been banking here for 42 years and wanted to meet you. The woman's eyes crinkled with a smile. Young lady, I've seen many changes in this bank over the decades, but nothing like this. For the first time, I see people who look like my grandchildren in the brochures. The teller spoke to me in Mandarin yesterday. Small things perhaps, but they matter. They absolutely matter, Maya agreed, deeply touched. As the morning continued, Maya circulated through the branch, listening more than talking. She heard stories from customers who felt welcomed for the first time, from employees who had discovered new purpose in their work, and from community partners excited about future collaborations. Near noon, she found herself back at the same teller window where her journey had begun 6 months earlier. Kevin was helping a customer, a young black man in casual clothes making a substantial withdrawal. The transaction was completed quickly, respectfully, and without unnecessary scrutiny. As the customer walked away with a satisfied expression, Kevin looked up and noticed Maya watching. He gave her a small nod of understanding. They both recognized the significance of what had just happened. Maya returned the nod with a smile. This was why she had bought the bank, not just as a business investment, but as an opportunity to transform an institution from the inside out, to create change that rippled outward. touching lives in ways both measurable and immeasurable. It had started with a single denied withdrawal and her simple, powerful statement, "I own this bank." But the true ownership now belonged to everyone who had embraced the vision of banking that worked for all. As Maya prepared to leave, Nia caught up with her at the door. "So which branch are you visiting unannounced next?" she asked with a knowing grin. Maya laughed. "That would be telling. But let's just say the work is far from over." She stepped out into the sunlight, energized rather than exhausted. The transformation of one branch was just the beginning. There were more barriers to break, more systems to reimagine, more people to empower. And Maya Richardson was just getting started.